Yes, ma'am. Ma'am, 9:45 की presentation है. Good morning, everyone. I'm going to present. कुछ था. हाँ, कुछ था ऐसे वाला. Yes, ma'am. कुछ था जी लगा बस. कुछ था एक लाइन लिखी थी याद नहीं. Good morning, everyone. Today I'm going to present on the topic new freudian theories, and my moderator is Dr. Sumit Mehta sir. Here is an overview of what we will be going through today. Introduction: the new Freudians, Alfred Adler, Erik Erikson, Carl Jung, Karen Horney, Eric Fromm, Harry Stack Sullivan, and Otto Rank. New Freudian is any theorist or psychoanalyst whose initial education or work was grounded in Sigmund Freud's theory, but which later made a conspicuous departure from the Freudian model, most commonly in the form of resisting the purported role of infant psychosexuality or in expanding the role of social and cultural factors in the formation of personality. Who counts as new Freudians? Alfred Adler, Karen Horney, Erik Erikson, Carl Jung, and peripheral new Freudians are Eric Fromm, Otto Rank, and Harry Stack Sullivan. Alfred Adler, born in Vienna, Austria, a general physician who became one of the original four members of Freud's circle in 1902, owing to his insistence on considering the whole individual rather than a piecemeal conception of personality. Adler's intellectual tradition was often referred to as individual psychology. Disagreement with Freud. Adler never accepted the primacy of libido theory, the sexual origin of neurosis, and the importance of infantile wishes. He gave the personality theory dynamism. Adler saw individuals as unique, unified biological entities whose psychological processes fit together into an individual lifestyle. Normal personality and adaptation. The cornerstone of Adler's personality theory is the concept of moving from a sense of inferiority to a sense of mastery, which is the most important motivation in life. Thus, the ideal person strives for superiority and does so through high social engagement. Birth order. The firstborn child reacts with anger to the birth of siblings and struggles against giving up the powerful position of being an only child. They tend not to share and become conservative. The second-born child must continuously strive to compete with the firstborn. Youngest children feel secure because they have never been displaced. Theory of psychopathology. Adler believed emotional disorders result from mistaken lifestyles that are subject to change by will and by self understanding. He gave the difference between neurosis and psychosis. Neurotic individuals maintain social interest but are blocked from life goals by symptoms, whereas psychotic individuals lose social interest and retreat into their own world. Eric Erikson. Erik Erikson was an artist, teacher, anthropological field worker, and a psychoanalyst. A prolific writer, Erikson is best known for his three major works. In Childhood and Society, Erikson advanced a theory of the life cycle, which traced the trajectory of individual psychosocial development through the maturing ego's relations with an expanding social world. In Young Man Luther, Erikson reconstructed and analyzed the youthful monk's identity crisis and its creative resolution in early adulthood. Gandhi's Truth demonstrated union of authentic identity and calling in a manner to. Erik Erikson is sometimes not regarded as a new Freudian, owing to a combination of his distance from the key American institutions of the movement and his own great prominence of his unique theories and contribution as a developmental theorist. He gave the epigenetic principle, which states that development occurs in sequential, clearly defined stages, and that each stage must be satisfactorily resolved for development to proceed smoothly. If a successful resolution of a particular stage does not occur, all stages reflect that failure in physical, cognitive, social, or emotional maladjustment. 8 stages of the life cycle. Stage 1 is trust versus mistrust, which is from birth to about 18 months. The mouth forms the basis of first mode of pattern of behavior, that of incorporation. As infants' teeth develop and it discovers the pleasure of biting, it enters the second oral stage, the active incorporation stage. Erikson asserts that trust depends not on absolute quantities of food or demonstrations of love, but rather on the quality of maternal relationship. A baby whose mother can anticipate and respond to its needs in a consistent and timely manner, despite its oral aggression, will learn to tolerate the inevitable moments of frustration and deprivation. Basic mistrust is a major contributor to the development of a schizoid personality disorder and in most severe cases to the development of schizophrenia. Erikson hypothesized that depressed patients' experience of being empty and of being no good is an outgrowth of developmental derailment that causes oral pessimism to predominate. Addictions may also be traced to the mode of oral incorporation. Stage 2 is autonomy versus shame and doubt, about 18 months to about 3 years of age. In the development of speech and sphincter and muscular control, the toddler practices the social modalities of holding on and letting go and experiences the first stirrings of the virtue that Erikson named will. A person who becomes fixated at the transition between the development of hope and autonomous will may develop a paranoid phase of persecution. The ruminative and ritualistic behavior of the person with an obsessive compulsive disorder may be an outcome of the triumph of doubt over autonomy and the subsequent development of a primitively harsh conscience. Known as anal personalities, such persons are parsimonial, punctual, and perfectionists. Stage 3 is initiative versus guilt from 3 years to 5 years of age. When there has been an inadequate resolution of the conflict between initiative and guilt, a person may ultimately develop a conversion disorder, inhibition or phobia. Those who overcompensate for the conflict by driving themselves too hard may experience sufficient stress to produce psychosomatic symptoms. Stage 4 is industry versus inferiority from 5 to 13 years of age. A child who is unprepared for this stage of psychosocial development, either through insufficient resolution of previous stages or by current interference, may develop a sense of inferiority and inadequacy. Stage 5 is identity versus role confusion from 13 to 21 years of age. Failure to negotiate this stage leaves adolescents without a solid identity. They suffer from identity diffusion or role confusion, characterized by not having a sense of self and by confusion about their own place in the world. Role confusion ensues when the youth is unable to formulate a sense of identity and belonging. Erikson held that delinquency, gender-related identity disorders, and borderline psychotic episodes can result from such confusion, and adolescents may defend against role diffusion by joining groups or cults or by identifying with folk heroes. Stage 6 is intimacy versus isolation from 21 years to 40 years of age. Freud's famous response to the question of what a normal person should be able to do well was Leben and Arbeiten, to love and to work. Erikson asserted that he meant a general work productiveness which would not preoccupy the individual to the extent that he might lose his right or capacity to be a sexual and loving being. The person who cannot tolerate the fear of ego loss arising out of experiences of self-abandonment, for example, sexual orgasm, moments of intensity in friendships, aggression, inspiration, and intuition, is apt to become deeply isolated and self-absorbed. Stage 7 is generativity versus stagnation from 40 to 60 years of age. Generativity is primarily the concern for establishing and guiding the next generation. Care is the virtue that coalesces at this stage. The failure of generativity can lead to profound personal stagnation masked by a variety of escapisms such as alcohol and drug abuse and sexual and other infidelities. midlife crisis, or premature invalidism can occur. Stage 8 is integrity versus despair from 60 years to death. Erikson defined integrity as the acceptance of one's one and only life cycle and of the persons who have become significant to it as something that had to be and that by necessity permitted of no substitutions. Failure of resolution at this stage can result in anxiety disorders in older persons. The decline in physical functions can contribute to psychosomatic illnesses, hypochondriasis, and depression. The suicide rate is highest in persons over the age of 65. This is a brief of the stages of psychosocial development. Carl Gustav Jung. Carl was a Swiss psychiatrist. He was trained under Eugene Buller and was strongly involved with Freud. His disagreement with Freud was Jung resisted Freud's particular framing of libido as unfolding childhood sexuality, believing that while libidinal drives sort of do exist, they do not hold the central and deterministic influence on personality development that Freud attributed to him. Jung expanded on Freud's concept of the unconscious by describing the collective unconscious. The Jungian unconscious has two layers. The personal unconscious, which is the superficial layer, is the equivalent of the Freudian's unconscious, a repository of individual memories that have been repressed. And the collective unconscious is a deeper layer, which is the residue of what has been learned in humankind's evolution and ancestral past, much as DNA is an aggregate of the past. This is the Freudian's model of the psychic apparatus, which involves id, ego, and superego. It makes the unconscious. Ego spans all three domains of unconscious, conscious, and preconscious, and superego forms part of moral conscience. Carl Jung gave the terms complexes and archetypes. Complexes are groups of unconscious ideas associated with particularly emotionally toned events or experiences. Complexes are often stimulated by interaction with others. The complex, formerly dormant in the unconscious, comes to the fore and tends to dominate the consciousness and to displace other complexes. For example, a father complex can be stimulated by a person who symbolizes a father, such as an old friend, or by a stimulus such as music or art that evokes father memories. Archetypes. Complexes are connected to structures embedded more deeply in the psychic operators, the archetypes. Archetypes are the inherited capacity to initiate and carry out behaviors typical of all human beings. Just as vision cannot develop without visual input during physiological critical stages, so archetypes require interactional stimulation for their elaboration into complexes. He also gave the term personality structure. At the center of conscious personality is the complex called the ego. Several universal complexes attend to the ego. The persona, the public personality, mediates between the ego and the real world. The shadow, a reverse image of the persona, contains traits that are unacceptable to the persona, whether positive or negative. A brave persona, for example, has its fearful shadow. The anima refers to a man's undeveloped femininity, and the animus refers to a woman's undeveloped masculinity. Psychological types, the extroversion introversion polarity. Extroverts are oriented to others and to the world of consciousness. Introverts are oriented to the inner world. Their energy flows first inward and then to the outer reality. The sensation and intuition polarity, which concerns perception. Sensation type comes to understand the situation by assembling the details, and the intuitive type grasps the overall situation before attempting to assimilate its parts. The sensation type sees the trees first, and the intuitive type sees the forest first. Karen Horney, she was a physician psychoanalyst who emphasized the preeminence of social and cultural influences on psychosocial development, focused her attention on the differing psychology of men and women, and explored the vicissitudes of marital relationships. Her disagreement with Freud, Karen suggested that social experiences of isolation and helplessness in a seemingly hostile world produce a basic sense of generalized anxiety that individuals must cope with, in contrast to the dry specific anxieties outlined by Freud. She proposed the concept of self, the actual self, the sum total of a person's experience, the real self, the harmonious, healthy person, and the idealized self, the neurotic expectation or glorified image that a person feels he or she should be. The neurotic pride and the pride system. The glorifying aspects of the idealized self, neurotic pride, substitutes for healthy self-confidence. Thus, when the pride is injured by others, neurotic individuals become enraged and seek to avenge their injury and to conceal their self-deception by achieving a vindictive victory over the offending person. Together with supporting claims and shoulds, neurotic pride and the self-hatred form a defensive network or pride system that protects the idealized self. Eric Fromm, psychoanalyst Eric Fromm was often thought of as the archetypal new Freudian, the leader among those who emphasized that culture and social setting influence an individual's dynamics as much as instincts do. Fromm's intellectual agenda was the integration of Freud's theory of dynamic unconscious and the Karl Marx's theory of history and social criticism. He gave the theory of psychopathology from identified five character types that are common to and determined by Western culture. Each person may possess qualities from one or more types. The receptive personality is passive, the exploitative personality is manipulative, the marketing personality is opportunistic and changeable, the hoarding personality saves and stores, and the productive personality is mature and enjoys love and work. Harry Stark Sullivan. Harry Stark Sullivan is generally acknowledged as the most original and distinctive American born theorist in dynamic psychiatry. When psychiatrists use the term paratoxic distortion, apply the concept of self esteem, consider the importance of pre adolescent peer groups in development, or view a patient's behavior as an interpersonal manipulation, they are applying concepts Sullivan first proposed. He gave two types of developmental theories, cognitive and social. He postulated three developmental cognitive modes of experience, whose degree of possession into adulthood is important in understanding psychopathology. The prototaxic mode, the parataxic mode, and the syntaxic mode. The prototaxic mode, these are deep states experienced as totalities with no temporal relationship. In later life, mystical experiences and schizophrenic fusion represent persistent prototaxic experiences. The parataxic mode, events are causally related because of temporal or serial connection. The self system uses this mode to seek effective anxiety reducing behaviors and to repeat them, seeking famous and predictability. Sullivan used this mode to explain transference, slips of tongue, and paranoid ideation. In syntaxic mode, it is the logical, rational, and the most mature type of cognitive functioning of which a person is capable. The social developmental theory. In infancy stage, the mode is prototaxic. In childhood stage, the mode is parataxic. In juvenile stage, which is from 5 to 8 years, shift to syntactic begins. In pre-adolescent stage, which is from 8 to 12 years, there is significant shift to syntactic mode, and in adolescence, there is syntactic mode. Otto Rank. Otto Rank was a 21-year-old student when he met Freud. Rank later earned a doctorate in psychology and eventually became a peer of Freud before ultimately breaking up from him. His disagreement with Freud, the basis for his break from Freud was Rank's view that both trauma was more important than the Oedipal conflict. According to Rank, the physical and the psychological experience of birth gives rise to a primal anxiety that is dealt with by primal repression. Rank viewed movement towards either union or separation not as an innate biological process but as an act of will. He saw guilt as the price to be paid for any act of will. Moving towards union causes guilt over being needy. Moving away causes guilt at abandoning the other person. Death fear is the fear of losing one's identity by fusing with another person. The weaker one's personal identity, the stronger the death fear. Life fear, by contrast, is fear of losing all ties in the process of becoming separate. Will, the prime mover in ranking and dialectic, is an irreducible creative force. The beginning of will is in child's no, an assertion of what the child will not do. In maturation, will becomes a positive force. My references. This is the stage from 31 to 21 years. In this stage, if failure to negotiate at this stage leaves the adolescent without a solid identity, which can result in identity diffusion or role confusion. Uh, Adolescents they defend against role diffusion by joining groups or cults or by identifying with folk heroes. Um,